Good evening, AP Gov students. This is the review on political parties. All right. So first of all, you need to actually think about what we talked about in this whole unit. And this whole unit is about political participation. Okay. And so the questions that the College Board is going to focus on are, why do levels of participation and influence in politics vary? Okay. Different people participate at different levels, for example. Second, how have changes in technology influenced political communication and behavior? All right. That's going to be important, of course, when we talk about media, among other subjects. Third, how effective are the various methods of political participation in shaping public policies? All right. So, one of the things you need to remember is that political parties, the subject of this review, in addition, interest groups and social movements provide opportunities for participation by you and me and everybody else. And they also influence how people relate to government and to policymakers. Remember that these are linkage institutions, okay? I think most of you know the linkage institutions by now, but remember that the ones that we've talked about are political parties, interest groups, elections, and media. And I think when push comes to shove, you could also call social movements a linkage institution. They don't happen as often. They're but they function that way. Okay, so what is a political party? Political party is a team of people who seek to control the government by gaining office in elections. Okay, remember that I've been trying to stress with you that political parties are about elections. They are not about grassroots lobbying. They are not about court actions. They're about elections. Okay, they put candidates up for office and they try to get them to win. All right? Okay, so talking about the party organization and structure, you basically need to remember that there are three levels of political parties. They're very decentralized. There's a national level, which in some ways plays a very important role because it controls the national voting process for president and for other national offices. Okay, but the local parties are also very important because they do a lot of the day-to-day phone call, person-to-person door knocking kinds of things. Okay, they do the grunt work. Okay, and then in the middle are the state parties. Each of them plays a role in the process, and each of them is important, but not. There's no formal link between them. Okay, there's no formal link between them, and that's one of the reasons why parties are a little weaker, okay, is because they have a decentralized approach and because they really have no way to enforce the platforms and policies that they try to agree on. Okay. Now, party functions, what do they do? Go through a few of these. Okay. Political parties, this is the basic summary of their functions. Okay. They mobilize and educate voters. Okay. This is how, remember, they impact political parties. Impact the electorate, how they impact the government. They get voters out. They try to educate voters, provide information to voters. All right. Party platforms. Let me go back to education of voters for just a second. For example, I think I showed you a pamphlet, actually it was on a slide, of voting recommendations by voting organizations, including the party. That's one of the things they do, is try to tell you how to vote at election time. Okay. Next, they do party platforms. A party platform contains the positions of the party on various policy issues. All right. The National Party platform is the one that we know best. We looked at at statements from the Democratic and Republican Party platforms, remember, and we identified where we thought they were from. Okay. Political parties recruit candidates to run for office. They help manage campaigns. They help raise money. They help plan media strategy. Okay? They sometimes give you access to things like databases with address information and voter identifying information. Okay? And also remember that the party is the structure for the committee and party leadership systems in Congress. Remember that you choose the chair based on who's in the majority party of committees, that is, chair of committees. You choose the leader of the House and of the Senate based on who the majority party is. And you divide up the members of committees based on who the majority and the minority parties are. Okay? Okay. Now, we talked a little bit about the weaknesses of political parties already, the fact that they're so decentralized and that they really have no enforcement power. Okay. That's exasperated by what has happened to parties over the last few decades. Okay, and that parties have changed and adapted throughout history. I had you do that project that you thought was so horrible on party eras. Okay. And because of the advent of television, number one, and other technology, okay? And second, because of the advent of the primary system, okay? Basically starting in 1972, this has changed significantly the balance of power between the parties and the candidates, okay? The fact that a candidate can go out and purchase media on television gives them a lot more control over their own campaign, and they need the party less. In addition, the party used to nominate basically the presidential candidate and basically tell everybody who to vote for. The party bigwigs would choose somebody. All right, they can't do that anymore. Okay, because you have to go through the primary/caucus system. Okay, and that has led to one of the main themes of government that we've talked about over the last few weeks. That theme of the change starting in the basically 60s with television and into the early 70s with the shift to the primary system, from the strength of the party system to individual candidates, okay, running their own campaigns, planning their own campaigns. Obama was kind of off on his own, frankly, when he did his, okay, and it's possible to do that, all right? Remember what a critical election is? You guys did an assignment on critical elections, and some of you thought that critical meant important. It does not. It has a very specific meaning. It means basically that there's a shift in important issues to the country, for example, with the New Deal, okay? A shift in party alignment, a shift in loyalties, okay, by different voters, okay? Something has a seismic shift. It's not just a matter of somebody going more one way or the other. It's a matter of some group of voters shifting their loyalties for one reason or another. All right? And if you don't remember the party eras, you should go back and look at them. But remember that the New Deal was the start of one of the eras, okay? Realignment, as we talked, party realignment is when you have this shift in party loyalties, which is often coincident with critical elections. Okay, not always. And in critical elections, you also often have the minority party take over for the majority party. Now, what's de-alignment? De-alignment is people leaving parties, period. Not just one person, but parties in general. That's something that's been happening in our history. Okay? If I were the College Board, I'd ask you about that. Right? Now let's talk about the two-party system. Give me a second. Okay, don't know where I was. All right? In our two-party system, one of the first things to remember is that in elections other than the Electoral College, you only need a plurality to win, okay? So even in the presidential election, you're going to have more than two candidates running, right? It's possible, and has happened several times, that the winning candidate only got a plurality of the popular vote, all right? And so that's true for members of Congress as well. You have them, the two major parties, running against other parties, third parties, and independents, okay? And they won't necessarily get a majority of the vote in winning. They might, but they won't necessarily, okay? That's what it means to have a pluralistic system, election system, okay? Now, we all know that there are many barriers, and they were large ones, to running as an independent or as a third-party candidate, okay? Problem is the winner-take-all congressional districts, especially, right? So to win the district and basically in the end to win the population for the electoral vote, there's only one person who's going to take anything, okay? The winner is going to get everything. There's nothing for the loser. So that pushes people to try to make their vote count by choosing one of the top two parties, since they have the best chance of succeeding, all right? They don't want to waste their vote by casting it for somebody else. Now, third parties nevertheless contribute a lot to our society. They aren't successful. They have rarely been successful, and even when they've been successful with the popular vote, okay, that doesn't mean that they've been successful in the Electoral College, right? Okay, you should remember that from the project that we did, from the assignment that we did, okay? Third parties nevertheless do contribute a lot to society, okay? Just a second. I want to show this to you. They provide some release basically in the system, okay? Number one, they bring new groups into the electorate, people who probably didn't vote before, okay? Number two, they introduce or focus on new or different issues. The Green Party really did that, okay? They made people start thinking about climate issues, all right? And environmental issues. The third parties provide safety valves for political discontent, okay? They, for the people who were really rabidly anti-slavery before the Civil War, they had what they called the Free Soilers, okay? That's an example of a release. Frankly, George Wallace's run for president gave some release to all the pro-slavery, anti-civil rights people in the South. They could at least go vote for George Wallace, okay? So third parties also contribute ideas to the political process. A lot of times their ideas are taken over by one of the main political parties, okay, who realizes the wisdom of the idea, the fact that there was an audience for the idea, and says, I'm gonna meet that need so that the third party doesn't get a leg up on me. Now remember that parties need to appeal both to extremists and centrists, okay? When a presidential candidate, let's talk about that. When a presidential candidate runs for office, right? First, they have to win the primaries, right? Okay? How do they win the primaries? Basically, they move over to the extreme of where the party is, okay? Because you know that you're going to catch all the moderates. You want to loop in some of those extremists, okay, to win the primaries. But when the general election comes around, it's the extremists, that you're probably going to get, okay, because they're not going to go vote for their, if they're Democrats, they're not going to go vote for the Republicans. They're still going to vote for the Democrat, okay? So what you are trying to do is collect the centrist voters, the moderate voters, the voters that might vote for either party, okay? And that's where you need to focus your energy in the general election. Okay, let's talk about the primaries for a second. Remember that there are two types of primaries. Historically, they were closed primaries. That meant that in order to vote in a party's primary, because remember in the primary you vote with your party, you don't vote on everybody. In a closed primary, you would go and vote in the ballot in your particular political party, how you were registered. Okay? If you were a Democrat, you voted the Democratic ballot. If you were an independent, you didn't get to vote at all in the primary. Now, with open primaries, which are becoming more common and are in, California has one, okay? You can vote in any primary you want. They still have primaries, okay? But anybody can vote in either one. And independents get to vote in either one, too. Okay, now remember about what the concept of divided government is. I would be very unsurprised if you got a question on divided government, because we have a divided government now since the election of 2018. Okay, this is the first AP test since we have resumed divided government. Remember that for the first 2 weeks, 2 weeks, if only, for the first 2 years of Trump's term, he had a Republican Congress. Okay, both houses were with him. That was a unified government. All right. But the Democrats took over the House. Remember that a divided government is when the president is from one party and at least one of the houses is from the other party. And in our case, the president is from the Republican Party and the House is from the Democratic Party. They might ask you an FRQ about that. I think it's possible. And about the importance of divided government and the effect that it has on the government's ability to accomplish goals. Because, of course, if you have a divided government, party polarization is much more significant and it is much more of a barrier and able to block activity by Congress. Okay? And, of course, the president's involved in that because he has to sign all the bills. Okay? Party polarization. Yeah, I talked about that. Okay. Party polarization is obviously a very big thing, and I've talked to you about it a lot in class. The parties have people in the parties have moved apart over the last few decades. Okay, it used to be in the 60s and 70s the Republicans and the Democrats were much closer. It was much more difficult to make a choice sometimes in the election because the candidates were much closer in their views of things. A lot of moderate, a lot of very effective work together in Congress to accomplish things because there wasn't polarization significant enough to keep them from doing that, right? But now you are basically considered an outcast if you don't vote with your party, okay? There's a very strong pressure to do that. Now, one last thing. Remember what a coalition is. It's a group of people, or actually it's usually a collection of groups, okay, who decide to work together toward a common goal. All right? So, for example, the Democratic Coalition includes African Americans, women, okay, other people of color, right? More educated people, but you know that they include the African American women and people of color coalition. Okay, gay people are in there too, and so that's a collection of groups who's working toward a common goal, right? And one of the things you want to be able to do as a political organization is have coalitions, build relationships with other groups, okay, because that makes you stronger. And you just need to remember that that's one of the things that that people try to do, though it is caused problems by party polarization. All right? Okay, I believe that we are done. Yeah, okay. See you later.